right, everybody, welcome back to Watch the Obsession live stream and chat. I hope you guys are doing great. I miss you guys. I haven't seen you in a while. And tonight we are going to be covering the Karen Read trial #1. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the case, Karen Read already went through an entire trial. The jury was hung. And hey, just recently, one of the jurors did an interview with Turtle Boy. And sometime later this week, tomorrow or the following day, we are going to do a live stream going over the recent interview that Karen Read herself did, and also that juror did on the channel Turtle Boy, because I think it is very telling what that juror had to say about his experience as a juror on the Karen Read trial jury. It's really interesting stuff. It's like a 3.5-hour interview or something. We're going to boil it down and take a look at the key parts. So welcome to you guys. I'm so glad you guys are here tonight. My voice is a little bit, I don't know. I'm just getting over the flu. It was terrible. I was really sick. Really happy to be back here now with you guys, though. And just as a programming note, this coming Saturday, February 22nd, we are going to have a special guest talking about the Watts case, an oil field expert. It's our very own Kevin, who's the moderator on this channel, who did a live stream with me once before, a long time ago. People absolutely loved it. The information that he has to offer about the case that cannot be obtained elsewhere is really quite extraordinary. And I'm so glad he's going to be with us again this coming Saturday to have a Q&A and talk about that information once again. So welcome Edward McJay, Jay May, Susan Peterson, Warning Label Nina. How are you doing? Susan, I already said Susan Pearson. But welcome again, my darling. Jody, I know that you're here somewhere, and I've seen some other people as well. So welcome to all of you guys. And let's get right into talking about the Karen Read case. So I'm going to do some things a little differently than I had planned because I don't have much of a voice. So I'm going to be relying on content from other channels, but I think that might even go a little bit better because so many channels have done really great work on this case. So I'm going to first bring you in a video that's just the Karen Read murder trial, a timeline of events that I think gives a pretty good synopsis and overview of the trial itself, the major issues, and kind of like the most shocking moments in the trial. And then we're going to go into some other things. So hope you guys are ready. Warning, the following video contains material that may be harmful or traumatizing to some viewers. Oops.
Big break in the case of a Boston police officer found dying in the snow during the blizzard. John O'Keefe was found dead outside of a home in Canton over the weekend.
And the big shocker, his girlfriend from Mansfield now charged with manslaughter.
Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?
That's what the prosecution alleges Karen Read told a friend after dropping John O'Keefe off at a home on Fairview Road in Canton, where he was later found in the snow. The courtroom was filled with Boston police officers and the families of both Read and O'Keefe, who listened as the assistant Norfolk district attorney laid out this timeline. He said the two were going out drinking at a couple of bars on Friday night before deciding to go to that home on Fairview Road. Read dropped O'Keefe off there early Saturday morning, did a 3-point turn, and left to go home. While home, Read's lawyer says she tried getting a hold of O'Keefe.
At 4:30 in the morning, my client is placing multiple calls to the victim in this case, to her boyfriend, wondering where he is, why he hasn't come home.
When she couldn't get in touch, she went back to Fairview Road to see if he was there.
At the time, it was snowing heavily, creating poor visibility.
O'Keefe was found around 6 Saturday morning and later pronounced dead at a hospital.
She discovered the victim in the morning. She observed him lying face up, snow on his legs, eyes swollen and blood coming from his nose and mouth.
Prosecutors say red pieces of plastic that matched the missing pieces from the broken taillight on Read's car were also found at the scene, while the defense argued manslaughter charges are not justified.
There was no criminal intent. This was not some random stranger. This was my client's boyfriend, somebody with whom she was in love.
We were happy, having fun, laughing, just very normal.
Her attorneys argued that evidence being withheld from them will show that the people inside the home are responsible.
Instead of finally investigating the people who had a motive to kill John O'Keefe, who beat him and left him to die in the cold in a blizzard, the prosecution has chosen instead to dig their heels in. This will not end well for them.
The attorneys have filed motions to get the phone records of homeowner Brian Albert and his sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe.
Why did Jennifer McCabe Google search how long to die in cold at 2:27 in the morning, 3.5 hours before she would have any reason to believe that John O'Keefe was dying in the cold in front of Brian Albert's house?
The defense argues Albert, who has a history of fighting, attacked O'Keefe along with his 90-pound German Shepherd. The Commonwealth argues witnesses, forensics, and every piece of evidence to this point prove Reed hit O'Keefe with her car.
I'm just a little confused as far as are they in the conspiracy, or are these people sort of let out of the conspiracy because they say something that doesn't further that conspiracy? If they're all in the house, and Mr. O'Keefe comes in the house and gets attacked by a dog and then gets dragged out to the bottom of the lawn and left there for dead, then why do they all testify that no one came into the house?
What Reed's lawyers were claiming in court today is that there is corruption in this case that might include Judge Cannone. Alan Jackson, Reed's attorney, pulled out a text message that he says Boston Police Detective Sean McCabe sent to a reporter claiming that McCabe had ties to the judge. Reed's defense requested the judge to step down. She denied that motion and any ties to anyone in this case.
I've never interacted with him, and I certainly never have socialized with him.
If you look behind me, you can actually see the barricades set up right now surrounding the courthouse. It's all because of the protests that we've seen in the weeks leading up to this trial. Reed is accused of backing her SUV into her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, and leaving him to die in a 2022 snowstorm. Reed pleaded not guilty to the second. Her attorneys claim she's being framed as part of a cover-up. The case has drawn a lot of attention, especially from supporters of Reed. That's why state prosecutors have put restrictions in place like that buffer zone that I mentioned. Some argue it's against their First Amendment rights.
Commonwealth is calling it a buffer zone, but they might as well call it a restraining order against the citizens of Massachusetts.
I think she's very unjustly been treated by the state of Massachusetts.
Karen Reed could be any one of us. Thank God she has the money and the means to fight this. But if it was us, one of everyday person, we'd be in jail by now, and you wouldn't even know about this.
What has this process been like for your family?
It's been hell. It's been 26, 27 months of hell.
She said, I hit him. She repeated it. There was a woman standing across from her who I believe at that point said, you're hysterical. You need to calm down.
Just something like, he's dead.
All I recall her saying was, is he alive?
Cross-examination of firefighter Flamati was contentious, as the defense asked him where he was in a video, why his claims weren't in a report, and what he said at the hospital.
You directly told the doctors and nurses that there was a question about whether or not he was hit by a vehicle, right?
Yes.
Have you ever said that in any context, either to the police or in a grand jury before today?
I don't recall.
Boston police officer John O'Keefe's family emotional in court today as the 911 call from the morning he died was played.
How many pieces of taillight did you find on or around that property?
That morning, none.
Reed's attorneys, who allege a cover-up, also questioning why inside the home wasn't searched thoroughly that morning.
Nobody put John O'Keefe anywhere but where he was found.
The defendant kissed me.
And how did she kiss you?
Not like a friend.
ATF agent Brian Higgins, who had an office at the Canton Police Station, taking the stand in the Karen Reed murder trial.
Defendant responded, you're hot. I responded, are you serious or messing with me? Defendant responded, no, I'm serious.
Prosecutors showing pages of flirty texts between the two. The same month, Reed's boyfriend, John O'Keefe, was found dead at 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
Not proud of these text messages. It is what it is. I'll take responsibility for them. But, you know, John was a friend at the same time. And if they were at the end of the relationship, they were at the end of their relationship. But I wasn't going to have somebody utilize me.
On cross-examination, Reed's attorney pointing out she didn't answer Higgins' text at the bar hours before O'Keefe died.
Well, why are you ignoring me?
It's not correct.
Well, am I chopped liver? So where's your phone?
I do not have that phone anymore.
You destroyed that phone, haven't you?
No, I threw the phone away.
Well, that's destroying the phone, isn't it?
Now, the interesting thing is this gentleman who is an ATF agent officer threw away his phone, disposed of his phone at a military base, and he pulled in Nicole Kessinger and also destroyed the SIM card, which he didn't realize no longer really carries information other than personal identifying information, not information about the content of the messages or content of exchanges in your phone. And this was after an order to preserve it wasn't made official yet, but it was tipped off to him by a friend who was connected to the case. The following day, he destroyed his phone, got rid of it, destroyed his SIM card. It's all very curious. I just wanted to add that point here.
I had every right.
Oh, well, I did do that. Sorry. Go back.
Right?
Yes.
Have you?
Dead at 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
I'm not proud of these text messages. It is what it is. I take responsibility for them. But, John was a friend at the same time. And if they were at the end of the relationship, they were at the end of their relationship. But I wasn't going to have somebody utilize me.
On cross-examination, Reed's attorney pointing out she didn't answer Higgins' text at the bar hours before O'Keefe died.
Well, why are you ignoring me?
It's not correct.
Well, am I chopped liver? So where's your phone?
I do not have that phone anymore.
You destroyed that phone, haven't you?
No, I threw the phone away.
Well, that's destroying the phone, isn't it?
I had every right to do that.
I'm not sure if it's in this document, but I can tell you today with 100% clarity, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Now, as Jay May just pointed out here in the comments, there was no officer's body cam video that picked up Karen Reed saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. It's 3 EMTs are apparently reported, but way after the fact, as Karen Reed's attorney points out. Now, another comment from McJay, she was talking about, let's see, I'm not sure where it is, but I'm going to play the testimony of one of the state troopers who was an investigator in this case, along with Trooper Proctor. Now, a few weeks ago, we listened to a bulk of his testimony. He was the lead investigator on this case, who apparently is the lead and the connecting point to all this corruption that after the first trial, I do strongly believe exists in this case. Now, the one piece of evidence that the prosecution had that they said showed that Karen Reed was the one who killed her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, as a matter of manslaughter. That was the highest charge that was brought up against Karen Reed, not intentional homicide, but manslaughter, was that her taillight was broken. Well, it is believed by many the pieces of that taillight were not found at the scene until after Trooper Proctor had a chance to get pieces of the taillight from Karen Reed's car at the Sally Port at the police station and then place them at the crime scene. Now, there's something very, very interesting that happened about the camera footage from the Sally Port, and we're going to hear about that right now.
Tonight, evidence called into question.
Not once did you mention that this video is actually completely inverted.
Investigation.
It was your belief that Mr. O'Keefe had been struck in the face by a person.
My initial understanding was that the defendant stated that she hit him.
Including dramatic courtroom audio from Karen Reed in the beginning stages of the investigation. Canton Confidential starts right now.
A shortened day in court, but no shortage of things to talking about. We have a lot to discuss. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Glenn Jones.
I'm JC Monahan. Today, Massachusetts State Police Sergeant Yuri Buchanan was called back to the stand. Sergeant Buchanan was the on-duty supervisor on January 29th of 2022, the day Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found in the front yard of a Canton home. Today, he was questioned about his investigation and the early days of the case.
That testimony included this video, which we showed you last night. It's surveillance footage from inside the Sally Port at the Canton Police Department, where Reed's SUV was stored after the incident. our producers flagged a specific detail that the defense also noticed because the sergeant was asked about it today. It was the apparent inversion of the video, like looking at everything in a mirror, presented the first time without explanation. We'll break down that line of questioning a little later in our show.
Before we hear about reaction inside the courtroom, our John Maroney shows us highlights from today's testimony.
Trooper Proctor, you were notified.
I am not Trooper Proctor.
Michael Proctor's name came up a lot during the cross-examination of State Police Sergeant Yuri Buchanan. The defense claims Proctor and others altered evidence to frame Karen Reed, suggesting in court he even manipulated key items like clothing John O'Keefe was wearing when he died.
And those would have been certainly accessible to and in the possession of the lead case officer in the case. Is Trooper Proctor, right?
Yes, if Trooper Proctor needed to review those items, he would have access to those items.
Buchanan is Proctor's supervisor, and the jury was again shown video of them at the Canton PD with Reed's SUV. Buchanan says neither one of them touched the vehicle. The defense has a different take, saying the taillight was manipulated along with the video, which defense attorney Alan Jackson pointed out is inverted.
But the timestamp across the bottom is not inverted, which means somebody had on the inverted the video purpose.
The defense says Reed demonstrated taillight backing out of O'Keefe's driveway, not hitting him with her SUV as the prosecution charges. The defense showed the jury what it says is Reed's SUV hitting O'Keefe's parked car, shaking the tire.
Did you see the jurors' reaction today when they saw that wheel move? That's not a small thing.
The prosecution presented new crime scene pictures, including taillight pieces and a cap belonging to John O'Keefe. It also played an audio statement they say Reed made to police.
We're all in on the same joke, right? My taillight was cracked and John was pulverized.
Testimony is over for the week. The judge says the jury can expect to get the case the last week of June. In Dedham, John Maroney, NBC 10 Boston.
Well, clearly we have some details to unpack here. So we have Sue O'Connell, our courtroom insider, with us. Let's start with that inverted video. We talked about it at the end of our show last night.
Yep.
And you talked about the reaction to it. Can you just go back a little bit and do that again and what our producers noticed yesterday?
Sure. So the prosecution showed this video, the original video, to the court yesterday. And then, there was some reaction and hubbub at the defense desk. Then there was a sidebar, and they were almost giddy at the defense desk about this. And Karen Reed actually turned around and mouthed, and you don't need to be, I have the wrong side. It's the wrong side. And so they had the sidebar, and then our team here took a closer look at what the video showed. And one of the first things they noticed is that the word police on that antique car and then the number 4 on the garage door are reversed.
Okay, guys, and the reason this is apparently they wanted to present this in court like you are looking at the passenger side of the car, okay? But really, the side that is facing us in the video that you see there is the driver's side of the car. Now, that is important because what you can sort of see is Agent Proctor, the lead investigator, who apparently was the lead of this whole cover-up, is hanging out towards the back of the car. And when the car is actually positioned correctly, you can see that it is the passenger side of the car, which is a car that apparently had that cracked taillight from hitting John O'Keefe. What it's believed is happening here is that Proctor is taking pieces of the taillight and destroying it. So the taillight is destroyed, so it looks like it was a more impactful hit than what really happened, which was caught in another security camera footage at John O'Keefe's house, which is, I just think Karen Reed dinged John O'Keefe's car when she was going out to look for him that morning. And then also so he could take those pieces of the taillight to distribute at the scene, which Jay May also pointed out at some point, which is correct. The pieces of taillight were being found for weeks after this event happened.
Here's what it's supposed to look like. That picture is what the actual evidence of the car is. So the question becomes, Why was it inverted? Why wasn't the jury told it was inverted? And what's the point of it, of this mirror image, which I guess is a term of art that we heard a lot today?
That's good questions to be asking. Sergeant Buchanan was asked about this during cross-examination today. Let's listen to what he said.
From this perspective, from the perspective that the jurors are looking at, from all indications, that would appear to be the right side of the truck, the passenger side of the truck. And that taillight that you can see is the right rear taillight from this perspective, correct?
The way it presents itself, yes.
And yesterday, during the entirety of your question by Mr. Lally, not once did you mention that this video is actually completely inverted.
I did not know.
Mr. Lally didn't ask you if it was inverted, correct?
That's correct.
And if I hadn't gotten up here and begun questioning you,
So Buchanan ultimately says there that when he received that video from Canton PD, it was already showing that mirrored image. So how did people in the courtroom react to that?
Well, you know, Glenn, that look you get on your face when you feel like you're having the wool pulled over your eyes and you kind of look at each other like, what, you know, what
gives?
WTF. All right. And there were 4 jurors who did that I saw just look at each other and go, what are we seeing here? What's happening here? It was confusing. And again, why my theme to this entire trial is why?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of doing that? Or is it just such a big mistake? Or you didn't think that it would, I mean, if we did that in this business, if we showed a video and we altered it and we didn't tell the viewers.
Well, I just explained what the point of it is. And I think that was rather obvious, but I guess not to this person.
We'd get in trouble for that.
Right. No explanation.
We also know looking in the mirror is not exactly the same as having someone look at you, because we look in the mirror a lot because we have to put our makeup on and we don't look the same on
We're very
TV.
vain.
So, I mean, there's real issues here.
But Assistant District Attorney Lally, do you think he knew it was inverted? Because that's kind of where we're at right now, right? Was that on the defense, Jackson is going at, how did this happen?
So what would
timestamp is normal?
Yeah. How would it have been different if during the prosecution present, he would say, what do you see here? And the witness said, well, it's mirrored because sometimes that happens. It's accurate, an accurate representation of what happened, but it's reversed. How much would there be there for the defense to kick up?
Right.
Alan Jackson said outside when he was asked about this, that he thinks that the prosecution was on social media last night, saw the reaction. I said, well, maybe you also saw our show. I put that in there. And that's why they went at it this way, that suddenly the witness had some answers, this mirrored conversation, as if it's not really that impacted.
But maybe the damage already done from a credibility standpoint.
Yeah, there was some head shaking.
There was that one comment, I'll just end with this, where it was in real life or in the video?
Right. When the witness,
that was actually said on the stand.
Yeah, when the witness is asking the prosecutor, the prosecution witness is talking about prosecution evidence and saying, are you talking about in real life or what we just submitted to the court as evidence? It was a wince.
Okay. Sue O'Connell, thank you. Ahead on Canton Confidential, we're learning more about Karen Read's possible state of mind following the death of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe.
When we come back, we break down the new video presented by
Again, either tomorrow night or Thursday night, we're going to do a live stream going over the recent interview with Karen Read and also the recent interview with one of the jurors on the Karen Read trial number 1 that was held on Turtle Boy. Can't wait to go over that with you guys. It's going to be awesome.
By the prosecution in court today.
Okay, you're aware he was beaten up by Brian and calling out I mean, we're all in on the same joke, right? My taillight was cracked and John was pulverized.
That was audio of Karen Read played for the jury today, and it was presented by the prosecution. Here to talk about it is local attorney and prolific TikToker, Catherine Leftis. All right, Catherine, now how do you think the audio supported the Commonwealth's argument in this case?
I'm not sure that it really supported anything to the Commonwealth's argument. I have always thought that audio didn't really help or hurt either side. It really seems, I think what the Commonwealth is trying to do is slowly present her statements, because Sergeant Buchanan spoke yesterday about her initial statements when they interviewed her, and that she asserted that she, didn't remember, that her.
All right, I'm going to move forward a little bit here to where we hear from Officer Buchanan again.
We welcome Sue back to the table. Sue, you are in court today for a moment that I would think is going to be a key, one of those key moments that developed. So we're going to play a clip and we'll have Sue comment on the other side.
Did you say that there's a possibility that D was struck in the face with a cocktail glass?
Objection.
Oops, sorry, guys.
Did you ever contact anybody at any medical facility and indicate that the investigation was being treated as a suspicious, in quotation marks, because the victim appeared to have been struck in the face by a cocktail glass?
Objection.
Allow that. Did you ever say that?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, I did say that to the medical examiner's operations desk.
Okay.
So this isn't the first time that another theory of what happened has been presented. How did it play to you when you heard it?
Well, I think, again, the jury now is skeptical. And I'm just looking at their faces and thinking how the faces that I make, like that face. And so
Okay, so that's one thing we did learn, that the jury is skeptical. And again, from that interview we're going to listen to either tomorrow night or the following night during a live stream with a juror from the Karen Read trial number 1, it's amazing how skeptical apparently some of them were. And there were so many other takeaways from that. And again, we're going to go over that either tomorrow night or Thursday night. So I'm going to bring another video into the stream. Again, I'm just doing it this way because I've been really sick and I don't have much of a voice now. It's like I talk for a minute and start to lose it, as you're hearing right now. So I'm relying on all this other stuff. Let's see, where'd that go? Okay.
But when his girlfriend says she was framed by police who are the real killers, it makes huge news. And that is the story. When a police officer is murdered, it makes news. When his girlfriend is charged with the murder, it makes big news. But when his girlfriend says she was framed by police who are the real killers, it makes huge news.
Okay, so I just want to clarify. Jay May asked me if Trooper Proctor got kicked off of the force. Now, initially, he was essentially reassigned, but like in a squishy, still on paid leave, but was still getting paid, right? And then there was that recent hearing, the last time we did a live where we listened to his testimony. So Jay May says to McJ, the investigation into his actions is still dragging on. He is on suspension. So yes, that is the actual detailed answer. Like I personally am starting to believe, given the statements that have been said by the superintendent of the Massachusetts State Police Force, that there's no way he's going to continue on in that position. But at this point, he is suspended. So yes, that is the correct answer.
And that is the story of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and Karen Read. John was killed and left to die in the cold on the front lawn of a fellow officer. Karen is on trial, accused of purposely backing her SUV over him, and the lead investigator in this case was attacked by the defense as a biased trooper who was out to get Karen and to protect his brothers in blue. Now, 70-plus witnesses have testified. The attorneys have made all their arguments. And now it's time for the jury to speak. We'll break down all the latest as we continue our investigation into the tragic death of Boston police officer.
And as we knew, since this aired, and this was when they were on jury watch, verdict watch, the jury did come back as a hung jury, which means we are waiting. Karen Read trial number 2, which is slated to begin on April 1st, 2025. And just like what? Less than a month and a half now. Count down the days. So we will be covering every day in detail on this channel. I promise.
I'm Benny Politan. Thank you for joining us. Here we are. Still waiting for the verdict from the jury. They did almost a full day of deliberations today. Left just a little bit early because one of the jurors had an issue. But the bottom line is the jury is working through this case. We're not getting a super fast verdict. It just didn't happen here. I know there's a lot of clamoring, people saying, "Oh, this is they'll be done by Tuesday afternoon." No, didn't happen. Didn't happen Tuesday afternoon, didn't happen Wednesday. So tomorrow's another day the jury will be back to work. But even though the jury doesn't reach a verdict, things happen during a verdict watch. This is the time when we do the proverbial tea leaf readings, right? Let's read those tea leaves. What's going on here? Well, and sometimes it's a little more obvious than other times. But the bottom line is things are happening. So let's take a look at what happened today as the jury came in for day 2 of deliberations, and the lawyers and the judge went at it.
Okay, a little off topic. The high priestess just said, "Oh, hey, I saw you in Colin's chat last night. I'm so glad you're part of the spooky family." And I was saying that his channel might be one of my all-time favorite YouTube channels. What we're talking about is Paranormal Files. Guys, it is freaking amazing channel. It's not just about the paranormal, because that's not something I'm super into. I believe in that, but the way people present it usually turns me off. But he does deep investigations into crimes, and it's really just an amazing channel. So if you are not yet familiar with the Paranormal Files, I just want to give a little plug right there. Colin's awesome. I mean, his channel's huge. You'll probably already know about it, but if you don't, you might want to check it out.
Jonathan, I just saw the verdict forms, and as we discussed yesterday, the amendments the court indicated it would make them.
Oh, no.
Not been made.
Okay, I did not say I'd make it. I said I'd think about it. I said I was tired and I needed to think about it.
Oh, this is a really interesting debate that goes down right now. So this is one of Karen Reed's attorneys. If you guys don't know, he's Attorney Jackson. He's from LA. There are some people that call him Hollywood Jackson. Some people find him to be a little too flashy in his designer suits and Rolex watches and whatnot, whatever. I think he's an amazing attorney. I have no problems with him. I think he's awesome. But he definitely he's not afraid to get into it with the judge, perhaps because it's not his typical jurisdiction's judge. But here he is arguing about the jury forms as to their verdict. And I think he has a great point here. Listen to this go down.
About it.
You said before you retired and you needed to think about it, was you agree that there needs to be not guilty options for the subordinate charges under count 2?
I said that it made sense to me, but no, I did not change it upon looking at it, because this verdict slip as submitted to the jury is exactly how it always is in Massachusetts.
I ask you a question then. I don't really care how it always is in Massachusetts. I care about whether or not it's appropriate.
Seriously, the balls of the man to say to the judge in open court, I don't care how it usually is in Massachusetts. I care if it's appropriate. I was like, damn.
Appropriate. It's appropriate.
Make my argument, if you wouldn't mind, Judge, why it's not appropriate. For a superior charge, they have to decide that she is not guilty of the superior charge. And that is the starting point of whether or not she is guilty or not guilty of any subordinate charge, often called a lesser included. Once they decide that she's not guilty of the superior charge, now there's two additional charges that they've been instructed they must decide whether she's guilty or not guilty of. How do they decide that she's not guilty of the first subordinate charge, involuntary manslaughter?
Okay. Anything else you want to say, Mr. Jackson?
I'd like an answer from the court. How do they decide that she's not guilty of involuntary manslaughter on that verdict?
That's their decision to make.
And how do they make it if they don't have an option to check a box that says not guilty?
They don't check the box that says guilty, do they? And then when they go to the next block, they don't check the block that says guilty. And on the top, you're left with not guilty. Okay?
So it's the absence of the check mark that the court determines is the not guilty finding by the jury.
Yes, that's what the verdict slip reads. It reads not guilty. If they don't check, block.
Whoa, high priestess, you would have fired this attorney if you were her? Oh my God. I think he did such a great job for her. I think this is zealous advocacy. And I think he did a great job. I think they're going to talk a little more about the jury forms here and take a look at them. I think it is confusing, but it was a little shocking that he did speak to the judge this way.
Block 2, 3, or 4, the verdict slip reads not guilty. Okay? That's how it is, Mr. Jackson.
Well, apparently that's how it's going to be because of the court's order. That is not how it should be, and it's over our strong objection. They need to see that there is a not guilty option for the subordinate charges. If they come back guilty on, for instance, involuntary manslaughter, that's immediately appealable. They didn't have an option on the verdict form to find her not guilty. It's almost like the court is directing a verdict of the subordinate charges.
Okay. I disagree with you. Mr. Yannetti, you've seen verdict slips exactly like this. Okay?
I actually have the verdict.
Have you had no lesser included?
No, we've always had lesser included, but I have not seen a verdict slip there where not guilty is not an option.
So he is the person on Karen Reed's defense team who is actually a Massachusetts attorney. And she says, Mr. Giannetti, you've definitely seen verdict slips by that. And he's like, actually, I haven't.
Okay, I disagree with you. All right, excuse me. This is funny, Ms. Reed. All right, we're done. There are some minor changes that need to be made to the verdict slip. Does the Commonwealth oppose?
So the high priestess, here's the moral of the story here. She did end up changing that verdict slip after a good night of sleep.
The suggestion made by Mr. Jackson, which seems like a reasonable one.
No, Your Honor.
All right, so it will be not guilty. So tell me again how you want it.
Sure.
You want-
Not guilty of the offense charged or any lesser included offense.
So big argument today about that. So let me show you the old verdict form so you get an understanding of what we're talking about here. If you take a look at it, you've got count 2, manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence in the above titled case. And then you've got not guilty as a choice, guilty of the offense as charged. And then there's 2 that are indented. And that was the problem. They felt like that if you found not guilty of the offense as charged, you would check not guilty, and then you go to the lesser included, and there's only a guilty line for those 2, guilty of lesser included offense of involuntary manslaughter. So the form of it was really the problem, the confusion. They end up fixing it by making the top not guilty of the offense as charged or the lesser included. But there's a lot of arguing about this. So let me bring in
All right.
our guests, all of them.
So I'm going to go forward a little bit because I think we've kind of discussed that fully. But yeah, that was really interesting for sure.
Cannoni, and it was a nice, at least.
Let's see, we have to go here. Who is that? Oh, is it our boy Proctor? Yes.
Because that's what logical people would think, but we're in a court. We're not dealing with logic.
We have about 20 seconds, Joseph, just 20 seconds. Your thoughts about that request by the jury to get that report, which they're not getting because it's not in evidence.
It's not in evidence. It's hearsay. Typically, they don't get
And less confusing to the.
All right. So there we go. Okay.
It's definitely in the plus column.
All right, Rick. Unless you want in on this, I think we've dealt with it. The jury also asked for the cert report today, right? They came in. They're looking for that cert report, which is the report relative to the search for these taillight pieces. Can you read that tea leaf for us tonight?
Well,
So clearly somebody on this jury was, questioning what is up with all those taillight pieces. There's something suspect about that. How were they collected? By whom were they collected? They wanted more detail about it, but they never did end up getting that report, as you'll hear.
I think, obviously can go different directions with it. I know that Nick did point out, and I do recall this testimony, that there were, from opening to the actual evidence of the discovery of these taillight pieces, there was a difference in the numbers. Maybe somebody seized upon that. Regardless, I think for both sides, they put this forth, the finding of these as strong evidence for their side. So I think I think the jury could have landed there just because it was something that they started discussing and there was some discord and they said, hey, there's a report. Let's get the report and that'll settle it, because that's what logical people would think. But we're in a court. We're not dealing with logic.
We have about 20 seconds, Joseph, just 20 seconds. Your thoughts about that request by the jury to get that report, which they're not getting because it's not in evidence.
It's not in evidence. It's hearsay. Typically, they don't get it. What I like about it is they're looking at every aspect of this case, including the technical aspects of the case. There's also information that the CERT team was there while Karen's car was at the Sallyport, the Canton Police Department. So, either side could probably look at it as a positive, but really it's just rank speculation at this point. It's an 8-week trial with 70 witnesses, 200 plus exhibits. No, I didn't expect a verdict today. They're doing their due diligence. They owe both sides a long and thorough deliberative process.
Absolutely. All right. Good news, folks. Everyone's staying for the hour.
All right.
So before the trial, there was a switch of the courtrooms inside the courthouse for this major trial, right? Major trial, major interest. The original courtroom where all the pretrial hearings were, that was the big, beautiful, historic courtroom.
Yeah, I don't know where I was talking about this here. I'm going to again move forward to the next issue.
They do. I mean, how can you not? They know who they are. And those were, this is the unique circumstance.
Admitted on the stand that he took part in regrettable, inappropriate, and unprofessional conduct
And this is Trooper Proctor, the lead detective and investigator.
during the investigation of Karen Reed. So, what happens next to Trooper Proctor? And what about the other murder cases he has investigated? We'll take a look.
This is interesting.
Your assessment, personal assessment, that Karen Reed had struck this officer with a car, gave you license to call her a
It was my emotions had gotten the best of me.
and you called her a whack job. Gave you license to call her that too.
Yes.
Gave you license to say to your friends, oh, no. She's right?
That's what I wrote.
Gave you license to say that she's a
Again, another disgusting comment.
You get to talk about her leaky balloon knot, right?
Objection. One of the biggest moments in this trial, the testimony of Trooper Proctor. And I think because we heard things that we don't normally hear in a case like this from the lead investigator.
Yeah, the high priestess. He was Trooper Proctor, the lead investigator on this case, was talking with 10 of his friends over Facebook chat, that he shouldn't have been telling anything about this investigation, all these things about Karen Reed, that he had come to a decision less than 24 hours after this had happened. And he was talking about her. He was saying, yeah, she's hot, but she's got a leaky balloon knot, which took me a minute to think about what that meant, but she has Crohn's disease.
He was on the stand, the direct, he went through it, and then the cross-examination went through it as well. So Trooper Proctor obviously kind of caught doing things that are very, very unprofessional, to say the least. Caused, people protesting Trooper Michael Proctor with signs like "Michael Proctor hates women." Then we found out that it was announced on March 14th that there was opened an internal investigation into a potential violation of department policy by Trooper Michael Proctor. Trooper Proctor remains on full duty. But then there's more to this, right?
And again, he is currently suspended. He was suspended with his high pay. I think it was like $92,000 or something a year for time being. Jay May, is he still suspended with pay, or is he suspended without pay right now?
Because this is not his only case. There's another big trial that we're tracking here on Court TV, by the way, involving a man named Brian Walsh. There he is inside the courtroom. He's accused of murdering his wife. And it's in the same courthouse. And Trooper Proctor is the designated case officer for that murder trial as well. Take a listen to some of the evidence in that case.
It had become evident that Mr. Walsh was suspecting his wife of having an affair. The oldest child's iPad begins to visit websites concerned how long does it take for a dead body to smell? How long does it take for someone to be missing to be declared dead? He is seen purchasing numerous items, including a Lennox high-tension hacksaw, 48 terry cloth towels, 200 disposable rags, trash bags. In the Swampscott dumpster, they found items, including a set of Volkswagen keys, Anna Walsh's COVID vaccination card. Also located in the dumpster, Your Honor, were rugs. These rugs contain red-brown staining as well, and a piece of a Gucci necklace consistent with one that Anna Walsh wore.
So what happens now? What impact does everything that was revealed during the course of this case have on the rest of his cases, the rest of his career, prior convictions of people he investigated? Let's bring back in our special Massachusetts think tank. Rick Grundy, let me start with you. What are your initial thoughts here about what impact this will or won't have on other cases like Brian Walsh?
So the short answer, it'll haunt him for the rest of his career,
No doubt.
as it should. Let me just remind you viewers, we've talked about this before, and obviously our other guests know that, but in Massachusetts, this is a highly prestigious position, and the troopers that get into the homicide units are a part of the district attorney's office. They're housed there. They're answerable to the district attorney. So starting with this current trial, the fact that he took the stand and was still in his position prevented the prosecutor from at least being able to say, and you were removed from the district attorney's office due to these actions. And now the district attorney's office doesn't have a say as to what Mass State Police do, but hopefully, and you were suspended. But this is what has been going on with what's called in Massachusetts the post filings, where they are created a whole registry of police violations. So like the others that end up on the post list, this gentleman's, these actions will follow him to each case. Mr. Walsh is wrapped up tighter than a pig on a spit, so I'm not worried about him. But the bottom line is Proctor should be removed for cause, and he will be ineffectual.
Joseph, your thoughts. What's going to happen? Does this impact any prior convictions involving him as an investigator?
Oh, absolutely. There was just recently a motion for a new trial allowed on a murder conviction down here in Plymouth County because it was revealed that the prosecutors had been exchanging anti-Asian emails with one another, inappropriate emails regarding anti-Asian prejudice. And Superior Court trial judge allowed the motion for a new trial because of the bias of the prosecution team. So I think there's going to be the same problem here. And if I understand Rick correctly, he almost thinks it would be better if the prosecution could say, you were removed from the district attorney's office. That's an awfully double-edged sword. I think if he gets demoted or fired, which he should, it's going to taint every case he touched. Now, in the Walsh case, if he's the primary out of CPAC on that case, the playbook has already been established in this case. If this jury buys the cover-up with the architect being Proctor, here we go again with Walsh, because who's not to say that he didn't get his hands on those tablets and enter in different Google searches? So this is a problem for past cases, this present case, and future cases.
Peter Elkin, will every defense attorney now try to get his phone and all of his messages and all of his history?
Oh, well, they'll be lined up for that. You'll have to take one of those like bakery things just to hold your place in line. I go with the conventional wisdom here that I just don't see a path to him ever continuing with his career. And even if hypothetically Karen Read is convicted of this case, that would not sort of exonerate or legitimize him at all. I just think, and I agree with what Rick Grundy just said, that I think the Brian Walsh case is really such super strong evidence. I doubt it's going to stop him from being convicted, but I can just see every case he's ever.
All right, again, we're going to move forward a little bit here.
I have 15 seconds to tell us 0 to 10, how important is the piece of evidence? Who is it important for and why? Joseph Krowski Jr., Peter Elkin, and Rick Grundy still with us. And if we run out of time, guys, I've got a bell tonight, so we'll be ready to go.
Okay.
Let's get to our first piece of evidence, which is that Karen Read is the one who found John O'Keefe and knew where his body was. Take a listen.
And your testimony was, as you approached, my client was searching frantically for John O'Keefe.
I don't believe I said she was searching frantically for John O'Keefe.
Searching frantically?
She was screaming frantically in the back seat and texting in the back seat.
Was she just sitting there, curled up in the back seat, sucking her thumb, or was she searching out the window?
She was screaming between Kerry and I. So I'm not really sure how she saw John over here when her head is up here screaming and then looking down and texting.
Was the whole
Okay, so now the person testifying right now, I'm making this video now that talks about all the different connections between all of the players here and what police department they're affiliated with and whatnot. But this one right here is a sister-in-law of the man, Brian Albert, and it was upon the lawn of his home that John O'Keefe's body was found. So that is who is testifying right now. Jen McCabe, this woman right there, had been there at that house earlier that evening after they all went out drinking, and a bunch of police officers left the bar, wasted, and got in their car and drove home with a blizzard coming. Cool.
point of that trip, Ms. McCabe, to search for John?
It was because she knew where he was.
Joseph Krowski Jr., 0 to 10. How important is this piece of evidence?
That's a very important piece of evidence. That's an 8 for the Commonwealth. If you couple that with Kerry Roberts' testimony that Karen Reed called at 5 o'clock in the morning and said John is dead, supposedly prior to her ever going back to 34 Fairview, and the data that shows that there is a good chance she drove to 34 Fairview before going to Jennifer McCabe's house.
Peter Elkin.
Yeah, on the face of it, I'd say maybe a 4 for the prosecution. It's kind of a wash. The fact that they drove up there and she's sort of the first one to spot. I mean, it's not that big. It wasn't a mansion with a massive lawn or anything. They're looking for him. The whole point was to search. And the fact that she saw him first, and then people are saying, "Oh, that must mean you knew where he was." I don't think that really carries. So maybe it's a slight plus for the prosecution, but it's not conclusive at all.
I'm going to go right in between there. I give it a 6 or 7, largely for the same reasons Peter did, is that it's going to depend on the leanings you have developed, whether you're going to give this witness credibility or not. More so where you're leaning than what you're hearing.
All right, let's get to our next piece of evidence, the cuts on John O'Keefe's arms.
Based on your review.
Okay, now just let me say that these are the only real injuries that John sustained other than an injury to the back of the head, which was the injury that ultimately caused his death. The person that examined his body described his body as being pristine, other than these abrasions or cut marks or bite marks maybe on his arm. This definitely does not look like it is caused by being backed into by a Lexus SUV at 24 miles an hour during a blizzard. What do you guys think?
Review of all of the data that you've talked about, all of the information that you were given and reviewed. What is your opinion or conclusion about how these injuries were sustained?
I believe that these injuries were sustained by an animal, possibly a large dog, because of the pattern of the injuries.
Peter Elkin, 0 to 10. How important is that evidence?
I think it's about a 7 for the defense that they were able to bring on.
Now, for those of you who don't know, that bite expert is going to be allowed into the next trial. There was a big hearing about that, and the homeowners, Brian Albert and Nicole Albert, did own a German Shepherd named Chloe, who did have a bite history. Chloe no longer lives with them.
Experts that said it was, and in their expert opinion, it was a dog. And I know that's kind of negated. The other side had an expert saying the opposite, that they found some pig DNA or something, which of course then they could, defense could knock that and say, well, how do you know that's not a dog treat was in his mouth? And then they also brought on, defense also brought on the expert saying, the Fed expert saying that, there would be evidence.
0 to 10.
I'd say 7.
I got to give that an 8 for the defense, because I just don't think the prosecution, I don't think the defense proved it, but I don't think the prosecution countered it all that well. But it ain't a dog's bite, I'll tell you that.
Joseph Krowski Jr., 0 to 10.
I'll give that 7 for the defense. I wasn't really impressed with the expert. Forensic canine bite pathology is a difficult thing. I didn't think it was a very sophisticated presentation. But to the eye, certainly it does conceivably look like dog bites. I don't think the Commonwealth did enough to explain how broken glass or the shards from the taillight could have in fact caused that injury.
All right, next piece of evidence, we're talking about the hair on the bumper of Karen Reed's SUV.
The mitochondrial DNA profile that was obtained from the sample, the hair sample, was consistent with the mitochondrial DNA profile obtained from John O'Keefe. So therefore, John O'Keefe cannot be excluded as a possible contributor of that hair.
Rick Grundy, 0 to 10, how important?
I put it right in the middle there again.
The dog was rehomed and is with a family in Vermont. They had had that dog as a pet for 6 years.
No, a 5. I liked the evidence that it was frozen into the bumper when they found it. But again, this is you're going to hear this with ears that have made some decisions based on evidence other than this. It's going to go whichever way you're leaning.
Peter Elkin, 0 to 10.
I'd say 1 for the prosecution. I think that, again, the jury's going to have trouble with credibility, that there's a hair not really attached on the side of a car, traveling 60 or 70 miles in the middle of a blizzard with blowing wind. However, even if you did believe it was his DNA, the fact that that's his girlfriend's car, the long-term girlfriend, I'm sure his DNA and his hair is inside the car, outside, all over the place. So I don't think that does anything for the prosecution, and I don't think the jury is going to give that much weight to it.
Joseph, 0 to 10.
Look, that's an 8 for the prosecution. If I couch that with, if you don't believe it was planted, but I don't believe Proctor would plant a hair on the side of the car. And even if O'Keefe had been in that car many times, to have that piece of hair linked by DNA right next to the broken taillight, if you don't believe it was planted, that's the case, isn't it? That's everything.
Final piece of evidence tonight, the accident reconstruction expert called by the defense.
In your expert opinion, based on all your testing, is the damage to the tail light?
This is really interesting. This expert was called by the defense, but it was not a defense witness. These were experts that were independent, doing work on behalf of the government. They've done work. They were governmental people, okay? But this is one thing that juror who did the interview with Turtle Boy spoke about, that he basically just discarded. Although everybody who watched the trial thought, oh my God, these people are so qualified. They must have absolutely, wow, the jury, they must be hanging on every word and believing everything they said. This was something that was just a really interesting point that juror that we're going to listen to sometime this week, tomorrow night or Thursday night, spoke about.
You saw consistent with striking a human head?
No.
In your expert opinion, is the damage to the taillight consistent with striking a human arm?
No.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Joseph, I'll start with you. 0 to 10, the accident reconstruction experts for the defense.
I think it was a 2. I think both sides were terrible. I think that Judge Cannone let them give opinions that really aren't even part of expert opinion. Typically, you have to have your opinion more confined. It seemed like both sides were just ad-libbing. At least he had the intelligence to not go out too far on an island like the expert Paul did for the Commonwealth. But I wasn't impressed by either side's accident reconstructionists.
Rick?
I agree with what Joe just said. I'll give it maybe a 3 or 4 because he was better than the guy on the other side, basically. But no superstars in this stuff. And again, it's evidence that it's going to pull you in the direction you're already going, and that's its top quality. And you haven't had to use the bell once, Vinny, on me.
Not yet. Peter Elkin.
Oh, I've already had the bell on me, but I'm wasting time. Yeah, I think that I'd give it a little bit more. I'd give it maybe a 6 for the defense, only because you hear the other side with their experts, and so maybe they kind of negate each other. But I thought he was rather effective, and I thought the idea that the defense brought in these independent guys, the jury had no idea why these weren't hired by the defense. Obviously, they can't find out that they were the feds. But they may have been impressed with it, that these are outsiders coming in and looking at it. But again, it may be kind of a wash because, again, battle of the experts, and we heard both sides. So that would bring reasonable doubt, but even. Don't ring me now.
I almost did, but I'm not. Go ahead, Joseph.
I go up to a 5. Peter convinced me. I think he was that much better than the Commonwealth's expert, but again, not overwhelming.
Look at that. Wow. Joseph Kraske Jr., Peter Elkin, Rick Grundy, your insight, your experience has helped us a lot tonight. Hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow night. We may or may not be talking about a verdict. We shall see. But in the meantime, folks, before we go tonight, we have a missing child who needs your help. Take a close look at the photo. This is Lois Elaine Epp.
Don't know if this person's still missing. This was 7 months ago, but let's watch anyway.
Lois is 17 years old. She's missing from Phoenix, Arizona since June 19th, been about a week. If you see her, this is what you need to do. Pick up the phone, make a call. You can always call 1-800-THE-LOST. You can always call 911. But you can also call the Queen Creek Police Department in Arizona. That phone number is on our screen right now. I'm Vinny Pollard.
Okay, guys. So, and again, thank you guys for, being good with all of that with me. Again, I was planning on doing something a little different, but because I can't really talk very well right now. Yeah, that's where we land. So, Carrie says, hey, Carrie, how are you doing? Great to see you. It's crazy. So much has been allowed, like all the insanity in this trial. Absolutely. This case is wild. Like the judge has Airbnbs she rents out to the people in the police department, right? Like how the heck? There's so many more details that we need to talk about in the corruption and indications of cover up in this case. It's insane. Jamie says the ARCA guys were hugely clear and scientific. Who are the talking heads? Yeah, I know. I agree with you on that too. Yeah, so I actually am going to end tonight just because I'm still obviously not feeling that great. And I'm sorry you're sick too, Sherry. And I'm sure you do take care of yourself, but I hope some other people are helping you out too, because I know you got a lot to take care of, sweetheart. But tomorrow night or Thursday night, we are going to do another Karen Read Live. So please hit like, share, tell people. There were only not so many people here tonight, but that's okay. I'm glad you guys were here. But I do want to keep talking about this case because I do think it's important to advocate for justice for this woman, because in my mind, she so clearly deserves it. And again, the second trial is coming up, slated to begin on April 1st of 2025. This coming up April 1st. So in the next live stream, we are going to be going over Karen Read's recent interview and also that super interesting interview. And again, it's like a 3.5-hour interview. So I'll pull up the most interesting parts with a juror from the Karen Read case, who was an EMT himself. His name is Ronnie. So we'll take a look at that. And then coming up this Saturday, we're doing a really special Watts live stream with an oil field expert who is going to be adding a lot of understanding this case. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So I definitely hope that you guys can make both of those. When I wake up tomorrow morning and see how I feel, I will post whether we'll be doing a live stream tomorrow night or Thursday night. I might try to get an Idaho live stream in here this week. I have this week off of work and I would do like a live stream every night. I'm so pissed my voice is like this, but there's not much I can do about it. It just sucks. Oh, thank you, Pepper. That's so sweet. Thank you so much. Hey, Anaphylaxis, how are you doing? All right, so I'm gonna sign off because I gotta go have dinner and get to bed. Gotta get feeling better. So everybody, thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon.